Hi, I'm Rachel Howard, sewing blogger at Family Ever After, sewing instructor, and mother of 3 plus 1 on the way. Today, I'm going to show you how I made this skirt. I call it a bandage style knit skirt, and I call it that because there's several different panels here that kind of imitate bandages wrapping around your body. So the first thing that you do is pick out a knit fabric, and you're looking for something that has a nice 4-way stretch like a jersey or interlock. And you also want to make sure that you're looking for something with stripes. These stripes are about 1/4 to 1/2 inch wide. Another thing that we're working with today is a fine 100% polyester thread, and the reason that you want that is because it helps your fabric stretch as you sew with it. It's not really a strong cotton thread, but the polyester has stretch to it. And we're also using a ballpoint needle in your sewing machine, which is beneficial because it pierces or it pushes your threads aside in your knit fabric instead of piercing through it as a sharp needle would. So to get started, after you've picked out your fabrics and all of your supplies, which are listed on my blog, you're going to start with making a pattern, a knit pencil skirt pattern. And these patterns are something that I drafted myself, which gives me a really customized fit. There's a lot of tutorials on the internet that help you do that. I found a great tutorial on Crafter Hours blog. And so once you have your pencil skirt drawn, another thing that you can do is you can take an existing skirt that you have in your closet and you can lay it down on a piece of tracing paper and trace around it. And then what you would do is add 1/2 inch seam allowance to the sides. And that's beneficial because you know that it will fit. Our next step after you have your pattern drafted is that you need to have the entire pattern for the front and back. And most patterns, they just give you half of it because you'll place it on the fold when you cut it. But in this case, you want to make sure that you have the entire piece across your body. The reason we want that is because we're going to measure out our panels, which I call the bandages. So you basically just decide where you want your panels to lie on the skirt, just a couple inches away, and they do not have to match up in the front and the back. So I've already made my marks, and I'm just going to connect them with my ruler and pencil. And you do that all the way down your skirt. Once you've drawn your lines, don't forget to label your pieces. This is really important. And I labeled mine front and back with the numbers. After you have your panel pieces drawn, you're going to use paper scissors to cut them out. When laying out your pattern pieces, what I did is on the bottom edge of each pattern piece, I lined it up parallel to one of the stripes in my skirt. The top edge will be slanted. And then you're ready to use your marking pen, and you're going to add 1/2 inch seam allowance and trace. Do that to the bottom and top of every piece. You don't need to add the seam allowance to the sides as long as your original skirt pattern already has the seam allowance included. And now once that's pinned down, you're ready to cut it out. And I found it easiest to use my clear ruler, rotary cutter, and mat. And you just cut those out. Once your pieces are cut out, I want to show you what they look like. Don't remove your labels quite yet, or your pattern pieces, because I have a little trick that's going to help you remember which piece is the front and which is the back. If you put a sticker on your fabric, that indicates that we're working with the front of our fabric. Some knit, it's easy to tell which is the front and which is the back, but sometimes it's not. Okay. So I just want to remove these pieces to show you how it's going to connect. Now at this point, we're ready to start sewing our bandage panels together. Okay, So we know that these are the right sides, and we're gonna just lay them over each other like this. Line up your edges flush so that your raw edges are touching, and insert your pins here. And when you're sewing with a knit fabric, it's important to note that the edges won't fray, so you don't need to finish off the raw edges. Also, when sewing with a knit, it's important to sew with a slight zigzag stitch, which will enable your fabric to stretch with you as you walk and sit. So I set my width at 1, and you can increase the length if you want. It should just be a tiny slight zigzag stitch. So you're gonna sew all of your bandages together. And once you've done that, this is how it will look. This is our front piece. And here's our back piece. And then it's time to sew them right sides together to create a skirt. You'll notice that my front is smaller than my back, and that's because my pattern accommodated for the curves that fall on the back of your body. So you're gonna line up the edges together and pin, and then you're just gonna sew your slight zigzag stitch down both sides. And this is what it will look like, sewn together. At this point, we're ready to add our lining. And I have 100% polyester as my lining with good stretch. And the lining is important because a lot of times your knit fabric is sheer and see-through. And also you have these inside seams. So to cut your lining, it should be the same widths as your front and back piece, and the length should be 1 inch shorter. Sew the side seams using the slight zigzag stitch, and then you're gonna pin the lining right side to the wrong side of your skirt, and then sewing at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, you baste all the way around the top of your skirt. Now we're ready for a waistband, and I have 2 different methods. On this skirt, I have an elastic waistband, and we're gonna learn more about elastic waistbands later on in the show. For this skirt, I want to demonstrate how to do a yoga waistband. And I have 2 pieces of fabric. Here's how you do it. I have my waistband here, and right sides together, you're gonna fold it this way and sew at 1/2 an inch seam allowance. The width of your waistband should equal the width of your own waist. So take a tape measure, measure your waist, and add 1 inch for your seam allowance. And the length for this one is 13 inches. That's up to you. You can make it 6 inches, 13 inches, whatever you want. I made this one really thick because I'm gonna turn it into a maternity skirt, and that will be a nice panel to pull up over my body. This one is much skinnier. So now we're ready to sew right sides together at 1/2 an inch seam allowance. Once those are connected, then you're gonna fold the band down on itself, and it will look like this. You'll have both of your raw edges on one side and a fold on the other side. Now you're ready to pin your waistband together. Put the raw edges facing up and fit your skirt inside. So you'll want to pin it evenly all the way around and sew with your slight zigzag stitch at 1/2 an inch. When that's finished, you just fold up your waistband, and that's finished. The last step is our hem. And I did not hem my lining because I didn't want the extra bulk there and it doesn't fray. To hem your skirt, I have a 1 inch template that I cut out of cardstock. You're gonna fold your bottom edge up over this, and with your iron, press to get a nice sturdy crease. Then you can add seam tape, which will make it nice and stable by pressing it in. Once that's done, you fold it up and sew at 5/8 with a double needle. This provides a nice stretch and a finished look. Let me show you on my skirt that I made. You can wear your skirt tonight after you've made it today.